The Irish nationalist movement, it's not a fascist movement. It's a freedom movement. It's not about hating anyone or hating people for their race or nationality. It's about loving our own nationality, our own culture and our own heritage. There is a war on being proud to be Irish, you see. In Ireland, one can be proud to be a Palestinian. You can be a proud Israeli. You can be a proud Ukrainian, a proud Muslim, or a proud Jew. But what you cannot be is a proud Irishman or a proud Catholic. You cannot stand up and fight a corrupt government, a corrupt mainstream media that attacks people at every chance that they get. Because if you do attack this corrupt system, you will be labelled a far-right fascist. The true definition of far-right is never really discussed, however, although I can argue exactly what far-right is. But the government's definition of far-right is basically anyone who's against pedophilia material being taught to our children is far-right. Anyone against mass immigration that's fundamentally changing the demographics of our communities is far-right. We watch Irish communities become less Irish and less white. But anyone who wishes to preserve our Irish culture and heritage is labelled far-right. Anyone against the eradication of Christianity and the push of Islam into our country is far-right. Anyone against a communist or fascist police state with restrictions on movement within 15-minute smart prisons, similar to the rules and regulations of the 5K COVID mandates, and not forgetting the QR codes that if you didn't take an experimental gene editing therapy, you were unable to work or socialise. Now we watch turbo cancers, rapid dementia, plenty of myocarditis, and so many, too many people who are dying suddenly.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you for being with us. This evening we're reporting to you that we've diagnosed an additional 359 cases of COVID-19, bringing the total number now so diagnosed to 20,612, 20612. There's an additional 43 deaths notified to us since yesterday, bringing the total number to 1,232, 1232. There has been one denotification since yesterday. This evening we're reporting to you that we have 2 additional deaths as a result of COVID-19. 17 deaths that I'm reporting to you this evening. 3 notifications of deaths. 16 deaths. An additional 17 deaths. 25 deaths.
Basically, anyone who's pro-freedom and slightly right of communism is now labelled far-right. In 2020, the puppets in government waged war on our individual freedoms in the guise of an international pandemic. But instead of banning international flights to restrict the so-called spread from infected countries, they decided on allowing people coming into our country, in which if there was a dangerous pathogen of a virus, this meant that our government knowingly decided to bring what they labelled COVID-19 into our country. If our airports had been closed, we would have surely stopped the pathogen from ever arriving onto our shores. Instead, they continue to allow the influx of people from countries with high infection rates. The next step was deciding to mandate masks on every man, woman and child. Not only did the masks not reduce transmission, they also made people sicker, because now they had lack of fresh air, and also dirty masks being continuously used caused havoc on their immune systems and caused bacterial respiratory pneumonia. After this, they went into a police state, in which government decided to lock people up in their homes. In a trial, 15-minute smart prison. Go outside your 2k, then 5k, you will be arrested. After this, they pushed another communist tool in the form of Digital ID 2020, the QR codes. Comply to take an experimental gene editing jab, or no holidays, no pints, no social activity, and in many cases you could lose your job. Since 2020, there has been a never-ending war on our people, on our heritage and on our culture. We are in a fight for our very survival as an indigenous people, as our freedoms are being eradicated by the scum within our Dáil. The puppets of the deep state are just mere actors put in positions of power so that they can bring about fundamental changes to slow boil the people into accepting a capitalist economy and a communist police state dictatorship. This plan has been many years in the making. What happens when you throw a frog into a boiling tub of water? The frog leaps out. What happens when you slowly boil the frog? It boils to death. Multiculturalism is quite simply polluting many other cultures onto our nation. The knock-on effect is that more dominant cultures will eventually eradicate the culture of the nation, meaning Ireland's culture will be eradicated naturally. Diversity is simply the eradication of an indigenous people's gene pool. Making communities more ethnically diverse means replacing the racial demographics of one's own people. Multiculturalism and diversity is white genocide, all part of Richard van Coudenhove-Kalergi's plan. Some would say he was the grandfather of the European Union, and they would be right. The European Union's main objective has always been the destruction of white Europeans. Our communities are being flooded by economic migrants and criminals, along with some refugees. Those who flee their country when their country needs them the most doesn't enrich our already progressive country. They enrich only themselves. If those coming here really enriched our country, well, haven't they just really weakened their own country by leaving it? Real courage would be third world migrants coming here to learn skills and bringing those skills back home to better their own country and help their own struggling people. That's real virtue. You see, it's easier to flee a struggling country in a time of war and hardship than it is to do the right thing and stay and fight to make their own country a better place. Brave Irish women and children didn't flee Ireland when our ancestors fought the British Empire. They stayed and fought. That's real virtue. Those fleeing their homes and going into safe countries raising a flag saying I stand with Ukraine or I stand with Palestine, that's not what virtue signalling, and is done by cowards and traitors. If you are not present during your nation's darkest hour, when your nation needs you the most, you are a coward, not a hero. Every nation right now is at war. Not a war like we see on the television. There's no tanks, there's no guns on our streets. But they are not needed, you see. Our enemy has infiltrated and embedded themselves into the hierarchy of all our nation's systems, be it politics, law, religion, academics, healthcare, journalism and community groups through the NGO system. They have used ideological subversion to make people lose all sense of reality. In the new upside down world, a man can get pregnant and a woman can transform into a cat with just the power of their mind. This is ideological subversion done by expert class psychology to bend and warp truth and reality. The idea to question cultural Marxist ideology is an attack on the establishment itself. How dare one say a man who claims he's a woman isn't indeed a woman? How dare you use logic and your eyes? George Orwell, 1984. The party told you to reject all evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. You see, without logic and truth, 2 + 2 becomes 5. The establishment rewards mental illnesses and depravity and punishes those with courage and strength that speaks the truth. Make no mistake, it's a war on our minds to accept a new way of living, a way of life similar to the old Soviet Union and today's communist China.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
In 1991, shortly after the collapse of communism, a globalist think tank called the Club of Rome released a document called The First Global Revolution, in which they declared global warming as the new pretext to wage war on humanity under the guise of saving the planet. The United Nations is an organisation that was set up with the same intentions of the Communist Manifesto. They want to create a one-world government dictatorship, a new world order, Agenda 21, aka Agenda 2030. This is the blueprint for this new world order. The United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, also known as the Rio Conference or the Earth Summit, was a major United Nations conference held in Rio de Janeiro from the 3rd to 14th of June 1992. This was when the entire world's government decided to sign away all nations' sovereign rights and set in place a plan to bring about this new world order, in which will change how the people of all nations will live by the year roughly 2030. Although Project Ireland 2040 shows it may be then when it's fully implemented here in Ireland.
Shared responsibility for freedom and justice. A world where the strong respect the rights of the weak.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
COVID-19 created the mandates needed for the World Health Organization to implement locking up all nations' people in their homes at will. They implemented the QR code system to socialise and travel. This was merely a test of compliance. The World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty is the mechanism they plan on locking people up in the future, whether it's more generated pandemics or geo-engineered climate change propaganda. They will lock people up at ease under the new police state system. 15-minute sustainable smart prisons. What is smart? S is for surveillance, M is for monitoring, A is for analysis, R is for reporting, and T is for technology. We are accepting many conveniences, but unfortunately we are trading them for our very freedoms. Did we choose to be where we find ourselves right now? Once again, we Irish stand in front of another enemy who's trying to take our country from our people. The enemy may dress and speak like an Irishman, but none of these politicians represent us Irish. They do, however, represent a wealthy group of internationalists who fund the plantation and destruction of ERA. The World Economic Forum controls our politics, a group of wealthy elitists who push and promote a socialist concept of living, financed by wealthy elites such as George Soros' Open Society. Why would wealthy businessmen be promoting socialism? Isn't socialism the idea of the poor rising up against the rich, the proletariat rising against the bourgeoisie? the oppressed against the oppressor? Are those financing the socialist revolution actual socialists? Absolutely not. You see, socialism was a social construct created with one purpose: to bring about communism. Socialists believe communism was created by the people to bring down the greedy banker capitalists, when in reality communism is the creation of the same wealthy banker capitalists. Their plan is to trap and enslave the people and ensure that they don't lose all the wealth that they have stolen from both nation and people. Those bankers have used Federal Reserve money backed by no assets, meaning they print money, which in reality is as useful as toilet paper, to enslave the people. They use this toilet paper, what we call Federal Reserve money, to finance wars on all nations' natural resources. So in essence, they have accumulated real wealth and assets with basically a fake currency. They have used this Federal Reserve cash, basically like cheese on a mousetrap, to enslave and trap the people like it does a mouse. The mouse wonders why there is free cheese looking at him when he stumbles into a house. He soon realizes when he takes a bite why the cheese was there. Socialism is a trap. There is nothing free in life. When those greedy bankers rule the world, or in power especially. People may look at those Irish brothers and sisters at protests and demos as attention seekers or politically driven. I can assure you that's not the case for most. We stand together and speak the truth because it is necessary to do so. We are here because no man of conscience should ever be silent, nor should they turn a blind eye. What good are eyes that cannot see, or a voice that does not speak? The battle has come to us. It rages in our towns, in our cities, and on our very own doorstep. The majority of Ireland knows that there is something wrong. They know our country as we know it is being eradicated under the banner of progressivism. Our culture, our religious beliefs and heritage is under attack. Our elderly struggle to heat their homes. Our Irish struggle to feed their kids. 14,000 plus Irish homeless, yet we bring in hundreds of thousands of third world military age men into communities that are struggling financially and struggling with minimum resources. A dark cloud looms over our land, and we must now fight so that the generations who precede us will not wake up one day as a despised and persecuted minority on their very own land, which is their birthright and is soaked with the blood of their ancestors. Our indigenous people are pushed aside to make way for those who are encouraged to come here, seeking entitlement at the expense of those who have been taught to wallow in self-hate and shame for the glorious deeds of our forefathers. White guilt is a wonderful tool that Marxists use promoting critical race theory. Well, we say no. We will not be shamed and we will not be silenced. I will take back what is rightfully ours by any means necessary and by the will of God. The time has come where mere words must give way to action, and you, the individual, must take up the struggle, or else risk being condemned to history as a traitor to your nation, to your race, and to your very own children. Those of you who remain silent are enabling the destruction of our country and people. The time has come, my brothers and sisters, to make a stand. Our nation has been ruined right to the point where we can't even talk about it. Members of our An Garda Síochána and military must start choosing what side of the fence they want to sit on. Do they stand with their country and people that they swore no to serve and protect, or do they continue to serve the foreign and domestic enemies that have infiltrated them at the highest levels of their hierarchy? An enemy that is hell-bent on the destruction of our wonderful nation and everything our people stand for. When the soil of our ancestors died to protect is under attack once more, we as a nation have a duty once more to protect our nation. Why isn't there more people trying to stop it? Are you afraid you will be labelled far-right racist by the very same enemy? Do you believe the politicians and journalists won't attack you eventually just because of your compliance now? Well, you're wrong. Over 100 years ago, our people were living under the rule of the British Empire. We remember these times through our songs today. Those who bravely fought the enemy back then were ridiculed by mainstream media and had traitors within families and communities working with the enemies, ridiculing them also. Well, I tell you now, the enemies today are our politicians. They are also, once again, our journalists, and not forgetting the NGO class and the traitorous Marxists who have also been embedded into our communities. There's a lot of hatred against our proud Irish brothers and sisters who bravely speaks out against our politicians and the internationalist agenda. The entire Ireland looks with disgust and contempt at those who dares to love their country, nationality and their people, because they have been conditioned to believe that real virtue and the love of oneself is bad, whilst praising those fleeing wars to save countries and raising flags as the heroes when they are not. Virtue signalling will never trump virtue. When war comes to your home, you fight at your doorstep. I assure those with virtue, our children will speak about how their parents stopped this war. Their parents said no to the illegal actions of their government and went out to call their people to action. Did you respond with virtue, or like the past, did you decide to stand with those who attacked our nation, or just as bad as the latter, did you remain silent and do nothing like a coward? While everyone else was too occupied with the bread and circuses and the distractions on the TV, whether they argued about what football team they supported or who was next to be voted out of some reality TV show, while the country burned around them. That's how all emperors kept the nation's people from rising up. Distractions of the Roman circus, the gladiator arenas replaced with football stadiums, endless soaps for the women to keep everyone distracted from things that really don't matter in life. Whilst other parents were busy marching across the country in order to drive out the parasite class and try secure their kids' futures in their own country. You see, the easy road is crowded. It's so much easier just to stay with the crowd. The herd mentality was always compliance. No matter what was asked of them by tyrants, they complied, believing this was the best thing to do, afraid to speak their own thoughts in case they were rejected by their peers or the crowd. But the road that's rocky and hard to climb is always the road less taken, but sometimes this road is more rewarding, because now you have decided to go against the groupthink and decided to think as an individual, free from state propaganda and mandates. We are coming together, we are getting bigger, we are getting stronger, and we are getting tougher. We have to be. Ireland is rising, the world is rising. The internationalists will lose once the majority realise exactly what the agenda is, and they will realise it. Make no mistake, the World Health Organisation's pandemic treaty will be the powers implemented to government, both local and national, to impose the lockdowns at will. Any such action, similar to what we saw in 2020-2022, will be treated as a declaration of war. And those who try to impose such mandates, whether they're politicians, journalists, on Garda Síochána, or even local community groups, will be treated as an enemy of ERA and to the freedoms of my people. Never again will the Irish people allow government to lock us up in our homes. Never again will I allow government to force pharmaceutical poisons into our loved ones or be forced onto my people. Never again will I allow government dictate any mandates onto my people. People dictate to government, not the other way around. Mainstream media and journalists who use fear to turn families and friends against each other. Never again will I allow you to do this. I will ensure no mercy to those facilitating totalitarian government on my people. Resistance to totalitarianism is imperative for the survival of our people. To the international parasites, you have destroyed our country, you have destroyed our communities, our small Irish businesses, and you have destroyed many Irish lives. But you will never, ever again take away our freedoms for any reason. There is no greater good than that of the individual's freedoms. Keep faith, my brothers and sisters. We will win this, of that I am certain. Éireann go bragh, and love to all.
I'm going to tell it to you straight. I'm going to tell you the truth. Our darkest days are ahead of us, not behind us.
And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there.
Just clap for that, you stupid bastard.
This will be the time because you really need world order, financial world order.
This alternative vision argues that ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
We are here to develop the great narrative, the story for the future. But in order to shape the future, you have first to imagine the future, you have to design the future, and then you have to execute.
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our Constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
History is truly at a turning point. Global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected. In times of crisis, the role of governments is more important and more relevant than ever. The profound challenges to mankind, such as climate change, are globally interconnected and require collaborative responses. What we have to confront is a deep, systemic, and structural restructuring of our world. And this will take some time. And the world will look differently after we have gone through this transition process. You have this anti-system movement. What we are seeing is a revolution against the system. So fixing the present system is not enough. Now there is, of course, an anti-system which is called libertarianism, which means to tear down everything which creates some kind of influence of government into private lives. It's dismantling the system.
So here's the thing about communism. When it comes knocking at your door, it doesn't say, "Hi, I'm here to impoverish, enslave, and murder you." It says, "I'm here to liberate you from oppression."
I thought of myself as a happy kid. I was going to school, I was playing. And I had no idea that I was being brainwashed.
Communism is like an international cancer. It must spread to survive. And America was the major impediment to the spread of this disease. They knew right from the start that America could not be taken from the outside. It had to be taken from the inside.
They infiltrated America's media and education.
He said the ultimate objective of having government school was to destroy Christianity. Those are his words.
But unfortunately, we have utterly red-washed education, so we don't know what creeping communism looks like.
I don't like the idea of teaching children that they're victims.
when we're undermining the family unit by saying that it's destructive to have any sort of heteronormative society.
Just affirm it, or else we're going to take your kids away.
And they say, well, no, that's not communism. It's Democrat socialism. It's just dog do. Put sprinkles on top of it. It's the same thing.
It was probably the most extreme version of communism. They separated children from their parents. If you ever want to take over a country, you indoctrinate the children. I just can't sit here and do nothing. This is the hill I'm going to die on.
They say that that's why we will take you to prison, because you're teaching your children about God and you don't follow our indoctrination.
Just like in the Soviet Union, in America, we have seen heavy attacks on fringe Christian groups.
And I hate to use that phrase, the final solution, but
overall, there were 76 deaths of men, women, and children.
And the real target is mainstream Christianity. But by attacking the fringes, you intimidate everybody else.
The Soviets infiltrated the mainstream churches.
All their, the top clergy, yes, they are working for the government. And even some of them is appointed by the government.
So the KGB agents would go into his church and then rise up?
That's right, all of them is infiltrated.
Similarly, America's churches have been infiltrated.
So the American communists started infiltrating the churches right from the start.
There are ravening wolves in sheep's clothing all over the place. They agree with Marx. So religion is the opiate of the masses, and the masses are going to need some opium because they're going to get put through some unpleasant experiences. Their liberty is going to be taken away from them.
What can we do? You know, get involved, do what you can. There is no time for complacency.
We're only going to be saved by telling the truth. Telling the truth takes courage. Courage is proof of faith.